Well, I'm going to assume some of that you mean not able to find the bugs they should, and the most important bugs. I mean, you'll never be able to find all bugs, but to your main thrust of your question of too much process, I've seen that. Now, this has an intersection with the question that Rich asked earlier about life cycles, because it gets into a bigger question of the overall environment world in which the testing has to live and operate. And certain environments, like if you're in a regulated environment, FDA regulations, for example, safety critical systems of various kinds, there is the need to create auditable documentation that things happened. And for our clients that are in that kind of world, we do see a fair amount of process, but it's not unnecessary process. It's necessary because of the world in which they live. And I think this is sort of the criterion that needs to be applied here when you're looking at process. You need to have enough process to satisfy whatever requirements there are to get the job done. And certainly if you're in an environment where there's a lot of, say, employee turnover or something like that, then there can be a need for more process because you have to write down things that might otherwise be obvious. Also, in large organizations, there's some value in having more process in place so that you can ensure consistency of test teams across the organization, which allows for comparability of KPIs, success metrics, across different groups, and also allows groups to share best practices because they do things in similar ways. But certainly, yes, so to your point, it is indeed possible for there to be too much process or process for process's own sake. I think this is, I didn't include this on my 10 worst thing because I don't think that I see it as often as I see the others, but I suppose if I were to do a top 20, it might very well figure in that list. Is there any questionnaire to assess your situation, Omar asks? Yes, absolutely. So as I said, there are a number of frameworks out there, and I think if you say, well, what are the top frameworks, I think, critical testing processes, which is in my book of the same name, systematic test and evaluation process, which is or software test and evaluation process, which is the book Systematic Software Testing. There's TMM and TMMI, which is described in Practical Software Testing, I think it's called, Bernstein's book, and then there's Test Process Improvement, or TPI, which is described in Martin Pohl's book. Obviously, I'm somewhat partial to my own critical testing processes. I think if you pick up a copy of that book and you work your way through it, you'll see that it is structured to allow you to look at a number of elements, processes, and determine how you're doing. Can you give a real-life example of a pain that you use these practices on? This is a question from Kirby. Yeah, absolutely. So we had a client, and the client would still have the client. This client, when we did the assessment, they spent anywhere from a quarter to a third of the test execution period on what they refer to, and I mentioned this before, as environmental shakeout. And this was a euphemism, because basically what happened is that the system to be tested would come to them in such horrible shape that you just couldn't do anything with it. And so they get new builds, and then it turned out the environment wasn't set up right, and then it would turn out that the test data wasn't loaded right, and all this stuff that could have been done prior to the start of system test execution. And when we got there, they were just sort of blasé about it. Everybody was. It was like, oh, this is the way things go. It was like in the Middle Ages when a quarter to a third of children didn't live to be adults. It's like, oh yeah, infant mortality happens. Well, no, it doesn't have to. And so what we did was we quantified the damage that was being done by that in terms of delay of release and also in terms of just inefficiency. What percentage of the test team's time was being squandered and how many dollars did this cost? And as a result of that assessment, this motivated them to do a number of things, one of which was a complete total overhaul of the test environments and the way the test environments were managed. So, this was a matter of just getting traction by calling people's attention to the pain. The pain was already there. It's just that nobody felt it, and nobody felt that there was a way around it. So, by putting a dollar figure on this stuff, it really gets people's attention. Now, let's see. Question via email. Are you saying in this presentation that test automation is stupid? Or is it just that using a particular tool is stupid? No, I'm actually not saying either of those things, and I'm glad to clarify that. I think automation is smart when it's done properly, when it's driven by a smart strategy and it has measurable return on investment targets attached to it. I think that automation is very smart. Particularly fond of automation of unit testing included in a continuous integration, regression test type of harness. Wrote an article on that called Mission Made Possible that's also out on the website if you're curious about how that works. So automation is smart. What's dumb is either using the wrong tool because you're not rigorous in your tool selection process and you get talked into basically buying a hammer to put screws in the wall, or trying to do automation without a strategy. Just assuming we're going to spend $500,000 on tools and something good will happen. It won't. Let's see, another question via email. I've done some of these things, and I'm going to stop now, but I'm sure that there are other stupid things that we might be doing. How does an assessment work? What is the process? Well, generally speaking, and the way that RBCS assessment works and the way that I think most assessments work is there's a combination of prep work, looking at documents and other work products produced by the test team or other parts of the organization, and interviews of the various key participants and stakeholders in the test process, and then finally analysis of the data. And out of those three things should come some sort of measurement of how the test team is doing with respect to the chosen measurement framework. This would be critical testing processes or one of the other three that I mentioned, and plus some prioritized set of recommendations, and again, hopefully prioritized via pain metrics of some kind or another. This whole process typically, when we do it per site, takes about a week of on-site, and there's about a week of analysis and prep and so forth associated with it. So it's not terribly time-consuming or terribly expensive to have a consultant do it. And it's not terribly time-consuming or difficult to do it yourself either. Let's see. A question from Kirby here. What if you find yourself in QA without having been involved in the process from the beginning? How do you rescue the situation? Well, the short answer, Kirby, is you can't. To assure quality, you would have to, from the beginning of the process, be involved in ensuring that the processes that were used minimize the risk of problems escaping from that step of the process to the next. To the extent that you can't do that, then you're not really assuring quality. You're getting into an assessment of quality mode at the end. And as I said, there is nothing wrong with that. But what's wrong is with the mismatch in expectations between what people want you to do, assure quality, make sure we don't have any bugs when we ship, versus what you actually can do, which is just assess the quality at the end. I have a question here from Satguru Anand. Hi there, the new ISTQB advanced courses cannot be taken online. Please arrange to take it online. So Satguru, I'm not sure what the issue is.